Determined to improve the rights of caravan park residents, a group of former van users today strode into the Consumer Claims Tribunal at Newcastle to present its case. 2 years ago, Port Stephens Council issued 81 holiday makers with eviction notices from lease sites in the Soldiers Point Caravan Park. Council planned to upgrade the park, spending $5 million on new cabins. But the residents claim Council broke its verbal contract, costing them more than $200,000 in total. They now want compensation and the laws relating to caravan users amended.
I think it's very important that the state government is watching what's happening here, because this type of thing is completely unnecessary if there was reasonable agreements outlining the rights of people.
The first claim, lodged in 1995, was found against the van users. Mr Paris says the group has now replaced its naivety with experience and is confident of a different outcome this time around.
It's certainly been a long and hard battle, but we've gained a tremendous lot of experience from that first case. I think we've all come to understand a lot more about what consumer law is, how it works.
The 2 cases heard today have been adjourned to next month. The group plans to lodge at least another 12 cases. Simone Cobb, NBN News.
The North Coast region will go inland to Tamworth and Armidale and stretch from Port Macquarie north to the border. Taree will fall into the Newcastle region, which will also include the Upper Hunter and parts of the Central Coast, including Wyong. From Gosford south will be known as the northern suburbs, while Moree will fall into the Orana Barrier region. Heading the North Coast region will be Commander Peter Walsh. Commander Terry Collins will take over Newcastle from Chief Superintendent Heinz Moller. Commander Doug Graham, previously in charge of the Peel District, will become head of the Orana Barrier region, while Commander Graham Morgan will take over the region known as Northern Suburbs.
The driver of the semi-trailer had stopped by the side of the freeway near the Mooney Bridge when his load caught fire at around 10:30 last night. It's thought a tyre may have punctured and become hot, igniting the rig. After initially burning intensely, the 10-ton load of foam pellets smouldered, emitting a strong odour which concerned fire officers. They closed the northbound lanes of the freeway until around 3:45 this morning. Traffic was diverted along the old Pacific Highway. And a trip to work for 2 young men has ended tragically. The 21-year-old driver from Batto Bay was killed instantly when his Gemini ploughed into a power pole at Killarney Vale. A passenger, also 21, was airlifted to a Sydney hospital with head and spinal injuries. He's in a critical condition. Police believe the men were speeding along Robertson Road and had tried to overtake a vehicle waiting to turn right. After crashing into that car, the Gemini embedded itself against the pole. The driver had no hope of surviving.
The Bicentenary Corporation had hoped to create a lively hub in the city's centre, setting up Wheeler Place as the festival zone. But the crowds have been notable by the absence. Wet weather and the fact that Wheeler Place isn't a traditional concert venue kept crowd numbers down, prompting the corporation to move the festival to Queen's Wharf for its final week. It's hoped the Queen's Wharf Brewery will attract larger crowds. No one from the Bicentenary Committee was available this afternoon to comment on the changes. The rescheduled acts include Lost in Vegas featuring Frank Bennett on Friday and Mental as Anything on Sunday. The concerts will be presented for free in an attempt to further boost crowd numbers.
The landing ships known as the HMAS Manura and the HMAS Canimbla are berthed in Newcastle for their refit. The Manura is already undergoing work at the Four Jacks dock. When the two ships were bought from the Americans in 1994, the government put the figure on the work at $36 million. 2 years later, with work set to begin, the figure is blown out by a further $69 million, pushing the final cost to well over $100 million. Defence Minister Ian McLaughlin says thorough inspections of both vessels revealed more rust and mechanical problems than originally thought. Mr McLaughlin has moved to avoid a potentially embarrassing diplomatic spat with the US government over the ships. In a written parliamentary answer, he denies the Americans deceived Australia in the deal. He says Defence Force personnel who had inspected the vessels before purchase had been given normal access to both ships. Once the refit is complete, the two will go into service as helicopter and troop carriers. Phil Hind, NBN News.
The proposed Landcom project is big. 400 houses to be built on 60 hectares of Crown land at Nora Head. Backing onto Wirrabulong National Park, with walking trails and ocean views, it's prime real estate. But locals are determined to fight the development, claiming it will kill rare native plant and animal species.
It makes me feel sad because this is a beautiful area, and when springtime comes, it's a beautiful area. All the flowers that come out, the orchids and so on, and it's the native life comes to life.
With the government advocating a commitment to coastal care, the community is outraged that a state government agency could destroy what they say is an important buffer for the beach. Wyong Council has thrown its support behind the cause.
Well, Council last night refused the subdivision application by Landcom. We believe the land is so important for recreation and for the environment that it should be set aside and added to Wirrabulong National Park.
With such a large-scale development likely to double the population of the town, the locals fear their village will be lost for good. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. While it's far from finished, Tumbayumby High has already welcomed in the new school term. Today it opened its doors to 300 Year 7 and 8 students, the first to tread the high-tech halls of this $14 million development. Principal Andrew Newman says the school is trying to change traditional teaching methods.
That we're starting immediately into a teams approach for middle schools, where we've reduced the number of teachers that a normal high school student would have in Year 7 and 8, and that has been shown to have quite outstanding impact on their education.
Computer and television cabling extends to each room. There's no school bell. Lessons have been extended and natural lighting is a major feature. Mr Newman admits there'll be teething problems, but is confident the changes will help students reach their potential.
The enthusiasm is there from the kids, the teachers are keen, and we'll make a few minor mistakes, but because of the goodwill and enthusiasm, we'll get over them very quickly.
Designed to cater for the growing Central Coast population, the school will gradually take on other years to expand to more than 1,000 students at the turn of the century. It's expected to be completed by June. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. Hugh Joyce loves his Subaru four-wheel drive. In fact, he loves nothing more than a day out driving with friends. But when he tried to organise a scenic drive for 20 members of Toukley's Probus Club, he was told their cars wouldn't be insured for the trip.
What concerns me is that so many other people are doing this, having these tours, fun tours, not mad bash rallies, but just fun tours.
Mr. Joyce says the plan was to follow a map outlining areas of interest in the region and not to race, go off-road, raise money or compete in any way.
Now, none of us are going to go mandy-low screaming around in our cars because 60% of us can't afford to buy a new car if we prang it up.
And while they're covered on any of Australia's rough roads, it seems this trip was deemed too risky for AAMI and the NRMA. The Probus Club members faced with no alternative but to abandon the idea.
We've just had to cancel it and not go.
The NRMA says there must be a misunderstanding. While they may refuse a claim if cars are being used for a race or charity event, they say there's no reason why a social outing such as Mr. Joyce's would be refused. Mr. Joyce plans to take the matter further. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
The Southwest Rocks area is a popular destination for divers, but yesterday it became the scene of a near disaster.
There were 4 in the party, 2 hadn't surfaced.
The Westpac rescue helicopter was called to the scene just after 6 last night, but failed to spot anyone on the first flyby of the coast. But with just 10 minutes of light left, the women were spotted 4 kilometres south of where they'd been diving at Fish Rock.
They did have black hoods on, they were dressed in black, and out of our peripheral vision we were able to see this yellow safety sausage in the water, so that was certainly a factor in saving the girls' lives.
The women were winched onto the helicopter, the rescue crew praising their safety precautions.
Well, they were very switched on girls. They certainly had all the safety equipment. They had the radios that initiated the initial call. They had their safety equipment in the water, and of course it's paid off.
Under the old tree preservation order, residents wanting to remove or even prune trees had to first seek council approval. But with a backlog of applications, the blanket policy became costly and inefficient for all parties involved. To speed up the process, Newcastle City Council has introduced new regulations.
We want to stop people from open slather chopping down trees, and that's always been council's policy. But now we want it to be a bit more flexible so people can provide the right sort of trees for their environment.
Under the new tree management order, residents can remove trees classified as a nuisance without council permission. It also allows the lopping of branches that are dead or which overhang buildings. However, when a tree is chopped down, another must be planted in a more suitable position. Council hopes the new policy will increase the canopy cover over the city.
Encourage people to understand how to manage trees, encouraging people to understand what trees are most suitable in Newcastle.
Simone Cobb, NBN News. "38-year-old Roy Delator is a convicted child rapist, an offender who, when released from jail, kept attacking because the system allowed him to." One of the most frightening aspects of this case is that Roy Delator was set free by a local court magistrate, even though he'd indecently assaulted 5 girls at Bathurst while on parole for sexually assaulting another child at Orange 6 years ago. When he eventually learned his parole was to be revoked, he told the court he set about finding himself a last sexual encounter. That was to lure a 9-year-old girl into bushes at Jesmond Park in Newcastle and sexually assault her. He then handed himself into police over the breach of his parole, believing he would never be linked to the Jesmond attack. But he was, and today, after pleading guilty to assaults on 6 girls, including those in Bathurst, he took the stand in Newcastle District Court, breaking down as he told how the assault happened because he was under stress knowing he was going back to jail. There will never be any amount amount of remorse I can show for what I have done. I just hope someone will forgive me sometime. Delator, however, denied he went to the park intending to abduct and assault a little girl. He said he wanted to walk his dog for one last time after failing to find homosexual company. The child, who was visiting from Sydney, suffered horrific injuries. Delator will be sentenced a week from today. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The Breakers were thumped 6-1 by Brisbane in the opening round, but any thoughts of a repeat performance were dashed as the locals went straight on the attack. It was all going right for Newcastle, even Strikers defender Andy Brayshaw lent a hand. And from the spot, Shane Price made no mistakes. 1-0, Newcastle tried everything to stretch the lead, but despite the pleas of coach John Cosmina and the 6,000-strong crowd, the teams had to settle for a scoreless end to the half. Brisbane returned from the break and caught the home side napping when Shane Price was down injured. Determined not to record yet another draw, Newcastle again found space. Troy Halpin's chip from the boot, followed by another from the head of Glenn Sprod. Trying to reply themselves, Brisbane strikers fired, but Liam Maguire was outstanding in goal, palming off the challenge. Then moments later, an own goal by Brisbane's Che Hughes sealed the result. Smiles all around in the Newcastle camp. The 3-1 victory was the side's third this season. It keeps their finals hopes alive.
The Bailey family spent today at Newcastle's Mater Hospital, still getting over last night's ordeal.
She ran into a spider web, and not knowing that the spider did go down the back of her garment, she felt like she had ant bites on her neck and arms.
Michael's wife Bonnie was bitten 8 times by a deadly redback spider, causing severe breathing difficulties and nausea. The Westpac rescue helicopter rushed to their Mount Olive home near Singleton just after 10, treating the woman before bringing her back to Newcastle.
I think she'll have the insect can spray out from now on, probably in her back pocket.
Bonnie was released from hospital late this afternoon.
Again shows the depth of the sport. It does look now like we have Josh Blair.
Any chances of boilovers in the final round of the Ironman series were flattened on Newcastle Beach today, calm conditions taking the element of luck away from the competition. The 75-minute continuous endurance started with a 1.8 kilometre run across scorching sand. Local hope Josh Blair in the blue, one of the leaders trying to snare overall second. The 19-year-old headed the field into the water for the first of two 800-metre swim legs, and the youngster made every post a winner. Blair carried the lead into the board and ski, but the challengers were close behind. A 35-second lead was cut to 25. Then Guy Andrews came out of the pack to be the main danger. The leading two then joined by champion Trevor Hendy, Steve Pullen and unknown Sydney-sider Glenn Cowdrey. More changes as the race progressed, but after 8 legs, Glenn Cowdrey was the first onto the sand for the run home and an upset victory. Overall, Hendy finished the Super Series second, Blair third. Earlier, Queensland 21-year-old Carla Gilbert took honours in the Devondale Ironwoman Series by winning today's final race.
Sue Barwick of Newcastle was diagnosed with scleroderma 7 years ago. For months, her hands kept turning white, tests revealing she had the connective tissue disorder. An expert on the disease, Professor Robert Clancy, says she's one of the lucky ones. Scleroderma is rarely diagnosed.
Generally speaking, it's a common mild disease, but it's not recognised. It affects many more people than most doctors probably think.
For sufferers, there's a wide range of symptoms: poor circulation, swollen joints, a tightening of the skin and a burning sensation behind the breastbone. Tiredness is also common, the disease more prevalent in women.
It is frustrating at times, yeah, especially it's tend to get very tired. And if you know you've got things to do and you're feeling really tired.
At the Royal Newcastle Hospital, a resource centre has been established to provide support for those with scleroderma and to help make people aware of the disease. Professor Clancy says education is the key to ensuring more people are diagnosed and treated.
Quite commonly we see women in their 60s or 70s that have had symptoms that could have probably been treated for 30 or 40 or even 50 years.
While there is no cure for the disease, there are many treatments available to make life more comfortable for patients. And with continued research, treatment methods are improving every year. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
More than 5,000 people got into the swing during the 3rd Australian Professional Bull Riding National Finals at Scone, but it was inside the ring where the best action featured. Cooler cowboy Nathan Burgess getting all tied up in the Division 2 event. But Burgess wasn't the only one getting the lowdown on the sport, as some of the best rough stock in the land lived up to their reputation in the middle. Some cowboys of the future got a taste of what life will be like if they take up the sport professionally. Competitors earned points throughout the year to qualify for the 2-day final. Central West champion Steve Thorne holding off a late challenge to win the overall title, while Greg Potter won the aggregate for the finals. But it was a Scone cowboy, Paul Metcalf, who was the crowd favourite. The only local bull rider to qualify, he won the all-round 2nd Division title.
The new development will cover the harbour foreshore from Nobby Signal Station to Throsby Creek. $1.1 million going towards cycleways, walkways, landscaping and tree planting. On the foreshore, Urban Affairs and Planning Minister Craig Knowles said the project would create more than 6 kilometres of harbour frontage for public access. Mr Knowles said the project would attract people back to inner Newcastle.
But the challenge now is to the private sector to capitalise on the opportunity and on the investment that governments have put into honeysuckle over the previous years.
The development will start in 2 months at Elizabeth Street along Throsby Creek. Within 6 months, people should be able to walk or cycle to Nobby's.
We're delighted because it's another part of our jigsaw puzzle, if you like, that we're putting together over 50 hectares of land, and it's a huge area of land.
As to where the proposed Honeysuckle Hotel will figure in the landscaped environment, Mr Knowles said that was up to Council.
Well, the hotel should be part of an overall development scheme, and quite clearly if there are new proposals for revitalising the foreshore to bring it back to the people, then hotel and tourism development is part of that landscape.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. Greg Nichols of Hamilton South and Peter Colley of Toronto were off duty and driving their own vehicles when a utility collided with a sedan in the Newcastle suburb of Merriweather Heights in November 1995. The utility burst into flames. Nichols and Colley punched out the rear window to rescue the 26-year-old from the fire.
Oh, well, this car was on fire and the other one was, I couldn't see it. So I come straight around this side. I looked at the window, there was a bloke I knew already.
You knew him?
Yeah, went to school with him. When I've gone to open the door, it wouldn't open. It must have been jammed or something, so I've had to tear the top of the window down.
The Newcastle driver has since made a good recovery. The 2 ambulance heroes will receive their bravery medals from the Governor, Gordon Samuels, later this year.
The Newcastle Hunter region is said to be a pool of disabled sporting talent ready to be untapped. Today's $60,000 donation from the Hunter Area Consultative Committee will go directly into identifying and developing that potential. Life Without Barriers will now employ a full-time sport development officer for the region.
We've discovered that there are hundreds of people out there that would like to be part of disabled sports that currently have nowhere to go, so we are giving them the opportunity to be involved.
Established athletes will also benefit. National track sprint champion Mark Whitman is one of several local stars looking to expand into new sports.
I'm already involved in powerlifting and I'll possibly get into sitting volleyball in a few years as well.
And Life Without Barriers want the best. Already interest has been shown by national champion athletes. It's hoped local facilities will soon rival those on the world stage.
Well, we know for a fact that several of the people who were in the Paralympic coaching team who went to Atlanta are very interested in coming here and setting up, if it's a funded position, to create a centre which can become a world centre for disabled sport.
With the new sporting development scheme in place, more of the country's top disabled athletes for Sydney 2000 could come from the local area. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
For Newcastle business leaders gathered at the Hunter Valley Research Foundation breakfast, it was the news they'd longed to hear. After a sluggish 1996, the Hunter's economy is now firmly in recovery mode.
A lot of our indicators are a lot more positive, and what they're indicating is that we should be experiencing more widespread growth within the region's economy in the second quarter, but definitely by the third quarter of this year.
The turnaround will be driven by low interest rates and a predicted housing boom in the Hunter, although non-residential building is forecast to remain flat. There are mixed signals on the consumer front. While consumer confidence is weak, spending is strong. One leading indicator, new car sales, is showing a 7% growth, well above the state average. The Hunter's big export earners can also look forward to a good year. While steel production continues to decline, demand for coal and aluminium will grow.
I think the outlook, first of all, for metals prices this year in the world market is much better than last year. If we're right and industrial production world growth starts to recover from 96, then prices will get a kick along.
The good news on the economic front means prospects for the region's unemployed people are also looking brighter.
We've now got about 10,000 people more employed in the Hunter's economy than the same time 12 months earlier. Now, generally our feeling is that that type of labour market situation is going to be maintained into 1997.
For Newcastle, today's report is an early gift as it celebrates 200 years as an economic powerhouse. Phil Hind, NBN News.
When the sun set on the Sunrise Circus last night, the rain fell, more than 100 millimetres falling on the site at Tumbiumbi. Circus workers grabbed what they could from the floor before a torrent of water swept through the big top.
So we've been up all night digging out trenches out the back there, as you see, and the whole place, actually the water was right up to here, right over this way. It's gone right through the tent.
The circus is working around the clock to mop up before the show goes on. The rain also poured down at Warnervale, Minnesota Road covered in water and closed to traffic. Meanwhile, Maitland show organisers have an anxious night ahead, hoping the rain will clear. History has shown that the heavens open for every Maitland show, despite organisers changing the date to beat the rain.
We try to convince the people if we're doing such a great service of putting the rain on, then they should put on the raincoats to come and see us. But people do tend to stay away if it rains.
And a watery mishap for a Lake Macquarie boat owner today whose vessel became wedged under Swansea Bridge. The crew of the timber cruiser was attempting to pass under the bridge but misjudged the tide. The vessel sustained minor damage to the bow. The three crew forced to sit out the ordeal until low tide. Blake Doyle, NBN News.